There are women who awaken, and there are women who merely brush past. The difference isn't in their technique, their hands, their beauty, or their timing. It lies in their intention. It lies in their presence, because a deep man doesn't ignite from empty gestures. He doesn't respond to routine kisses or well-rehearsed compliments. He burns when someone dares to explore what has long been buried. Beneath the surface, his soul, his silence, his unspoken story. He awakens when a woman touches not his skin, but his essence. Not every woman can do that. Not every woman wants to, and the ones who don't eventually find themselves confused, frustrated, and invisible. You ask why they ignore you, why he doesn't look at you like he once did, why you don't feel desired anymore. You wonder if it's your age, your appearance, your wrinkles, your weight. But no, that's not it. What's missing isn't on the outside, it's what you've forgotten to carry within. You've forgotten how to awaken what truly matters. You've been tricked into thinking that desire is born in the bedroom, sparked by lingerie or technique. But that's the illusion. Desire is born in the silent space between intention and presence. This is for the woman who's tired of being invisible, who's ready to stop performing and start connecting. If you've ever touched a man and felt nothing change, no subtle shift in his breath, no look in his eyes, no tremor of his chest, then this will explain why. You touched where everyone else touches. You used a script worn thin by decades of repetition. You tried to crack a safe with the same combination used for boys, not men. But a man, especially one who has lived, who has lost, who has carried others, who has sacrificed, does not open through performance. He opens through presence. And today, we begin a journey through the 5 forgotten places he longs to be touched. Though he may never admit it, these aren't erogenous zones in the way you think. They're portals. They activate his mind, his body, and his soul. And if you dare to go there, with patience, with respect, something sacred begins to shift. Let's begin with the first point, the lower back. It's where his armor begins to fall. This area holds the silent weight of years. It's not just where tension accumulates physically, it's where emotional exhaustion gathers too. A man who has lived life fully has carried much on his shoulders. Mistakes, victories, decisions that cost him, responsibilities that aged him. So many women try to engage from the front, his chest, his face, his desire, but they forget the back. They forget that men too want to be held. Not seduced, held, not used, beheld. And the lower back is a sacred threshold for that. Imagine this. He's at home, perhaps fixing something, immersed in a mundane task, not thinking of connection or romance, and you, without a word, approach him. You don't rush. You don't touch him for attention. You simply place your hand gently yet firmly on the curve of his lower back, not in a sexual way, not with urgency, but with full presence. In that moment, if you do it with intention, something happens, something ancient, something visceral, because you're not touching just muscle or skin. You're sending a signal to his nervous system. I see you. I respect the weight you carry, and I am here. Jung would say this is a message to the shadow, the part of him he hides from the world. When you touch a man like that, you reach places words cannot. You're not just a lover, you're a witness. And in a world where men are constantly expected to perform, produce and protect, being witnessed is a radical experience. This isn't magic. This isn't manipulation. It's presence. And yet very few know how to give it. They rush. They want something in return. They touch with expectation instead of reverence. And so the man withdraws. He doesn't say why. He may not even realize why. But something in him goes cold. That's the price of being touched without soul. So here is your invitation. The next time you see him standing quietly, not asking for anything, not expecting connection, go to him. Don't ask. Don't speak. Just place your hand on his lower back with full intention. Breathe. Let him feel your steadiness. Let him feel that you didn't come to get anything. You came to give presence. You're not touching a body. You're touching memory. His childhood, his exhaustion, his longing to be seen as a man, not as a provider, a friend, or a function. And this awakens something primal, something no words can name, not arousal, not desire, recognition. This is the kind of connection that heals, that rebuilds what once felt lost, that stirs something sacred in both of you. And if you've done it right, you'll know, not from his words, but from the way he breathes differently, from the softening of his shoulders, from the silence that feels full instead of empty. You will have touched his soul, not just his skin. And this is only the beginning. Because if the lower back is where his armor begins to fall, the next point is where his memory begins to wake. We now move to point 2, the inner part of the arm, a place most women never notice, but one that holds the key to reviving what's been forgotten. Not just in him, but in you. If the lower back is the place where his armor begins to fall, then the inner part of the arm is the place where memory awakens. It is where dormant emotions stir, those that he's buried, forgotten, or decided he no longer deserves to feel. We live in a world that trains men to detach from tenderness. From a young age, they're told to man up, to toughen their skin, to suppress anything that makes them seem too soft, too emotional, too vulnerable. Over time, touch becomes a function, not a language. A handshake replaces an embrace. A slap on the back replaces a caress. Affection turns mechanical, then disappears altogether. And as women, sometimes we unknowingly reinforce that. We stop touching with wonder. We begin to touch for results, for validation, for confirmation that we are still loved, still wanted. And in doing so, we forget the art of touch as an offering, as reverence. But hidden within the inner arm, along the soft, unguarded flesh that runs from the bicep down to the wrist, is a powerful key. A zone rich in sensitive nerve endings. Yes, but more importantly, a place tied deeply to emotional memory. When a child is comforted, when a friend is held in grief, when two people sit side by side and feel safe. It's this part of the body that often receives the gentlest, most meaningful gestures. So why is it ignored? Because we've forgotten that desire doesn't begin with friction. It begins with remembrance, with making someone feel again what they once thought they'd lost. That they are safe, that they are seen, that they are worthy of touch not because they performed, but simply because they exist. When you touch the inner arm of a man, do it slowly. Do it when nothing is expected, not in a moment of seduction, but in a moment of stillness. Perhaps you're walking beside him or seated together. Don't look for a dramatic gesture. Just reach over. Rest your hand lightly, reverently on that inner space. Let your fingers linger. Let them speak what words can't. Don't say anything. Don't ask for a reaction. That part is critical. If you seek acknowledgement, you dilute the power. He'll feel that the gesture is not for him, but for your ego. Instead, touch from a place of overflow, of genuine care, and he will feel something stir, a sense of being held without demand, a rare experience for most men. Let's go deeper. Ask yourself, when was the last time he was touched without expectation? Not because someone wanted something from him, but because someone simply wanted to connect. Most men can't even remember. As they age, their bodies become more functional than sacred in the eyes of others. Their fathers, mentors, workers, protectors, but not lovers in the emotional sense, not beings who deserve softness. Touching the inner arm is a radical act. It rewrites a narrative that says, "You're only desirable when you give something back." It says instead, "You are still human, still needed, still worthy of tenderness, and if you do it with presence, if your hand carries no pressure, no performance, just presence, he may not say a word, but something in him will shift. A silence will pass between you, not the kind that comes from discomfort, but the kind that comes when two people realize they've entered sacred ground. You'll see it in his eyes later, in the way he looks at you when he thinks you're not watching, in how he begins to soften, not just physically, but emotionally. That is the beginning of emotional trust, the seed of lasting desire. Because real desire isn't born in the bedroom. It's born in the pauses, in the quiet moments when someone dares to reach into what's been forgotten, in the moments when touch becomes memory, and memory becomes a bridge. Jung would call this an encounter with the archetype of the lover, not in the sexual sense, but in the mythic sense, the part of him that remembers how it feels to be cherished, that remembers what it means to feel affection not as a precursor to something, but as something sacred on its own. The inner arm holds that memory, but you must reach it with clean energy, with no agenda, no performance, just presence. And here's a truth few are willing to accept. Most women lose their power not because they age, but because they stop being present. They start chasing formulas instead of connection. They read tips, tricks, techniques, but forget to ask, what is my intention when I touch him? When your intention is rooted in presence, even the simplest gesture becomes profound. And when it isn't, even the most erotic gesture feels hollow. So the next time you're near him, don't wait for the perfect moment. Create it. Reach for his inner arm. Let your touch be slow, like you're tracing something sacred, like you're reminding him of a time when he still believed in love without transaction. He won't say it. Most men won't, but inside, he'll feel it. He'll remember, and in remembering, he'll begin to trust you. Not because you seduced him, but because you saw him. And when he begins to trust, that's when you reach the next threshold. Because the journey of awakening a man, of truly touching his soul, isn't linear. It's layered. And we now arrive at the third point in this path. A place where vulnerability becomes surrender. A place that many women fear because it's so close, so raw, so intimate. Not in the sexual sense, but in the emotional one. The edge of the jaw. The place where power meets fragility. The place that says, I could hurt you, but I choose not to. The place that says, I'm not here to take, I'm here to protect. And that, as you'll see, is where trust deepens into connection, where walls fall, and where love, real love, finally has room to breathe. You've already begun to understand, real connection doesn't begin with grand gestures or elaborate plans. It begins in the small intentional moments where energy replaces words. We've touched on the lower back, where armor fades, and the inner arm, where forgotten memories stir. Now we arrive at one of the most powerful and often feared places of all, the edge of the jaw. It's not just a part of his body, it's a symbol of power, of vulnerability, of how close someone can get before defenses rise or fall. This area, nestled between the strength of his neck and the sensitivity near his lips, is charged with meaning. It holds tension. It holds silence. It holds the remnants of battles he's fought alone, the kind he doesn't talk about, not because he's hiding them, but because no one ever stayed long enough to understand them. When you touch a man there, not to seduce, not to claim, but to see, you do something extraordinary. You awaken his ability to trust again. But here's the secret. This isn't a place to rush. If your touch carries urgency, if it carries expectation, if it's performed instead of felt, he'll recoil, not visibly but inwardly. He'll retreat into himself and you'll feel it in the space between you. Cold, distant, silent. Why? Because this part of him, this edge, between face and throat, is where surrender begins. And surrender is not possible without safety. Picture this. You're sitting together, maybe in quiet conversation. No romantic cues, no heated moment, just stillness. You lean in slowly. You lift your hand and gently place your fingertips against the edge of his jaw. You don't caress. You don't smile. You don't speak. You simply stay. Hold his gaze, not intensely, not seductively, just present. Like someone who sees him not as a role or a title, but as a whole human being. A man who's strong, yes, but also exhausted. Capable, yes, but also yearning to be held in a way that asks nothing of him. A way that says, I'm here and I see you. This is not a technique. This is a declaration. A wordless way of saying, you don't have to prove anything to me. Most people think desire fades because of time or routine. But it truly fades when we stop exploring each other. When we stop being curious. When we only go where the maps say to go, and forget that real discovery requires courage. To touch behind his knees is to say, I'm not here to follow a script. I'm here to discover you. The parts no one asks about. It doesn't have to be elaborate. Maybe you're lying in bed or sitting on the floor together. You reach out. You let your fingers rest lightly behind his knee. You don't speak. You don't try to make it erotic. You let it be human. That's when it lands. Because men know when you're just going through the motions. They feel it. Not in their heads, but in their nervous systems. And when they sense that your touch is real, intentional, present, they begin to open. They begin to breathe differently. They begin to trust not just you, but themselves again. Behind the knees, the edge of the jaw, the inner arm, the lower back, none of these are magic buttons. They are invitations. Invitations to a different kind of relationship. One rooted in reverence, not reward. And when you master this presence, when you learn to touch, not to take, but to honor, you will awaken. Something most women never reach, the space where his spirit begins to emerge. But there is still one final threshold, one final point of contact that transcends the body completely. The place where desire becomes trust, where presence becomes union, the scalp, the seat of thought, of tension, of the masculine mind itself. And that is where we'll go next. We've journeyed through forgotten landscapes. His lower back where armor melts, his inner arm where memory stirs, the edge of his jaw where vulnerability surrenders, and behind his knees where the invisible parts of him long to be seen. Now we arrive at the final threshold, the scalp. This isn't just the top of his head. This is the summit of his inner world, the place where tension builds, where thought loops repeat, where the pressures of his entire life converge in silent weight. If the body tells his story, the scalp contains the unspoken chapters, the internal battles, the mental noise, the silent fears he carries when no one is watching. And that's why it's also the place where connection, real connection, transcends the body. This is not a typical place of touch. Not one most women would consider unless they're stroking his hair out of habit. But when touched with presence and pure intention, the scalp becomes a doorway, not to arousal, but to deep primal trust. When you touch a man's scalp with reverence, without words, without seeking, without wanting, it tells him something no compliment, no seduction, no flirtation ever could. I desire your mind. I honor what you carry inside. That is revolutionary, because in a world that values the body, the surface, the appearance, who dares to say, I see the man beneath it all? I want not just your strength, but your stillness, not just your fire, but your silence. But be warned, this isn't easy. Done without the right intention, this gesture can feel invasive, even awkward. It requires more than technique. It requires presence, complete, undistracted, loving presence. No words, no expectations, just being. Try this. The next time you're close to him, lying beside him, sitting near him, reach your hand slowly toward his head. Gently place your fingertips on his scalp, and let your touch be feather-light, curious, intentional. Don't massage. Don't try to arouse. Just stay there, present, patient, still. Breathe, not for him, to center yourself. Let your nervous system calm his. Let your presence speak what your mouth cannot. I see your mind, and I am not afraid of it. I am not trying to fix it. I am willing to hold it. That's what few understand. Most women rush because they're uncomfortable with stillness. They want instant results, a reaction, a signal that it worked. And when they don't get it, they retreat, thinking they failed. But here's the truth. Nothing deep responds instantly. Not trust, not connection, not healing. You have to give it time. You have to give it stillness. Because when you touch his scalp the right way, something sacred happens inside him. His breath slows. His mind quiets. The constant stream of worries, decisions, doubts, pauses, just for a moment. And in that pause, he feels something he may not have felt in years. Safety, not the safety of routine or obligation, not the safety of someone who tolerates him, but the deep safety of being fully accepted in stillness, with no expectation, no performance, no need to protect or provide or fix, just presence. This is how oxytocin, the hormone of trust, is released, not through words, through silence, through sincerity, through stillness, and when that trust is earned, not taken, when that stillness is offered, not demanded, something awakens inside of him that no performance ever could. He begins to see you differently, not just as a partner or a woman or a lover, but as a mirror of something greater, a reminder of what connection was meant to be: sacred, patient, deep, real. And the irony? You didn't do anything elaborate. You didn't seduce, manipulate, or convince. You didn't rehearse words or wear something special. You just showed up with your soul. You touched him with reverence. You remembered who you are. That's the real power. Because most women touch out of emptiness, out of need, out of fear. But the women who change a man's life are the ones who touch from wholeness. They don't touch to receive. They touch to witness, to awaken, to offer. And when you reach this level of presence, he can feel it. Not on his skin, but in his spirit. You stop being just another woman and become the one who saw him. Not the version he performs for the world. The real him. The forgotten, exhausted, beautiful version that he's hidden even from himself. So ask yourself, am I ready to be that kind of woman? Because if you're still chasing validation, still hoping that a gesture or trick will make him desire you again, then this path will feel foreign, even painful. Because this isn't about him. This is about you. About who you choose to be when no one is rewarding you. when no one is giving you what you want, when it's just you and your silence and your truth. Are you the woman who needs to be seen, or the woman who has already seen herself, and therefore can see others? This final point, the scalp, is not just a physical location. It's a metaphor. It's the crown, the bridge between body and spirit, the intersection of thought, memory, and soul. And when you can touch there, with patience, without needing a single thing, in return, you've stepped into the rarest kind of connection, true intimacy. Not physical, not emotional, energetic. That's what he's been waiting for, whether he knows it or not. That's why the old gestures don't work, why the spark faded. Because the spark was never meant to be kindled through friction. It's kindled through frequency, through how you show up. So if you've come this far, you're already different. Most people never do. They stop when it gets uncomfortable, when it gets quiet, when truth starts to demand transformation instead of comfort. But you didn't. You stayed. You listened. You reflected. And now you see, desire is not born in the body. It's born in presence. Connection is not built with performance. It's built with intention. Love is not sustained by words. It's sustained by how we choose to show up. In the pauses, in the touches, in the places no one else dares to go. So now you're at a crossroads. Will you go back to old patterns, seeking results, repeating gestures, chasing his attention? Or will you step into this new way of being, with reverence, presence, and power? Only you can choose. But one thing is certain. You can't unknow what you now know, and neither will he, once you show him. The journey doesn't end here. If this touched something inside you, it's because part of you is waking up, reclaiming your voice, your value, your power. So stay curious, stay present, keep discovering the forgotten places within him and within yourself. Because this was never just about men. It was about you, about how deeply you're willing to live, and how bravely you're willing to love.